Hello, I'm Megan. I'm the orchestra sheet music specialist here at Stanton's, and I had the pleasure of answering the phone one day when Dr. Jan Ebert here called, and she had some amazing stories to tell me, and I would just very much love it if everyone else could hear them too. So, take it away.
Oh, thank you. Well, I thought I'd like to talk about John Stanton first, since that's the name of the company. And John was my band director when I was at Bexley High School. I'm wearing my Bexley alumni outfit. And he was very special and very determined to make things very well done. And we'd had a great band director before that, Ted Tagenhorst, who was John Tagenhorst, who does all the wonderful arrangement. He was his uncle, but they both were Ohio State people, and John was too. And it was a very new experience working with John. I'll have to make an admission. My brother, who is a professional drummer, got all the rhythmic talents, and I had no idea how all that worked. I had studied piano and everything else, but I didn't get that particular gene. And I remember I had asked Mr. T when we were having band, he'd say, well, now that's a solo, Janet. And I sat first chair flute all 4 years, but anyway, it was so funny because I'd say, well, sing it for me. And he would sing it for me. First time John said, now you have this solo, Janet, and I'd say, well, sing it for me. He said, I will see you in my office after school.
Oh.
And Janet got a very big initiation into how rhythm worked. It was so funny. And now every so often I get a student who's just like I was, and I tell them, I know what's going on, but I also know you have to cure it, you know. But it's so much fun. And John did a lot of wonderful things. One of the things that he taught me was, my senior year in high school, he said, I need help with all these youngsters. I'd like you to give private lessons out in the community. And I had to drive to the homes of the students and gave them their lesson and picked up my 50 cents and left. And which is hysterical, but at least I could pay for the gas for my dad's car occasionally, but because then it was 32 cents a gallon. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Talk about inflation.
Yeah, huge difference.
But at any rate, John introduced me first of all to his wife, who had been first chair flutist at Ohio State, and Mary was a wonderful teacher. I really have to credit her with a lot of the wonderful things that happened to me, and credit him with some of the other good things that happened. One of the first things he did was he got me involved in putting music in score order. Apparently whatever we had for a library was an awful mess. And so I learned score order long before I left high school, and I knew how to file it and all that sort of thing. I also found out something. Now, the big music store in town was Heaton's, and but they mostly had, they didn't have like choral arrangements or band arrangements or anything. It was mostly pop music and piano, that sort of thing.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, at one time they invited me to come and play the piano in the front of the store where people would just put the music down and I was supposed to play it, and I said,
that's cool.
That's a lovely idea, but I don't think I'm up for that. Yeah, but
That's a lot of
anyway,
pressure.
that was where you went. And if you wanted, like when I started teaching, if I wanted a band arrangement, you had to send off to Philadelphia someplace. And when I was in college, the flute music we'd send to France for it, you know. So, I mean, it was just incredible. And John saw that need, not just in this community, but for really nationwide almost. And
At this point,
but
Stanton's will ship internationally.
yeah, he was always about the sheet music as well as directing and playing and so forth. And so I got an early initiation into all that. And when I went to Ohio State, I kind of looked around, and I can remember the bassoon teacher had in charge of all the woodwind music. And I was looking for something, and he said, "Oh, don't even open that cupboard." He said, "It's just awful in there." And I said, "Well, would you like me to work on it? I kind of know how to do this." And that got me into a whole different space at Ohio State, because I became, well, for one thing, I got 35 cents an hour for ushering, and that was fun. And I got 35 cents an hour if I turned pages for recitals. But the big thing was that I got to be librarian for a lot of different groups, and I got to do the concert band. I did the librarian work. I remember that particularly because I adored Dr. McGinnis, but I was also terrified of him. And I passed out the music and got that all in the folders and all that, you know. And then one time we were playing some very difficult piece of music. I've forgotten what it was, but anyway, he looked at me and he says, "Where's the ripieno clarinet part?" And I just shuddered. I thought, oh my Lord, I left it in the folder. I didn't know what a ripieno clarinet was, so I didn't put one out, you know. Well, I knew after that to look for those parts, but the thing was that I had that background that I for some reason, I love doing it, you know, and I still at home, if my things get out of order, I'm sitting there putting, okay, piccolo, flute, clarinet, you know, all down the line, you know. I think that if you've been a librarian, it lives with you. And then that put me in with the OSU marching band. And those times, those are some of the big thrills in my life, were things to do with the marching band. It was wonderful being in concert band because we got to play music that, had I gone to other schools, that might not have happened, you know, just really superb
High quality
opportunities. And, but with the marching band, it was a whole different way of doing things. And of course, they were all brass.
Right.
And, I had to ask what all those instruments were. We had the basic ones in brass class and all that, but when I got something for tenor horn, I'd have to go say, what is this? And I wound up ultimately, many years later, playing alto horn, so I'm very good about knowing what an alto horn is. But there have been so many wonderful opportunities, and when John stopped teaching at Bexley, he had in mind that they could use a music store that had, you know, the big things. And he went in first with musical arts, which was up on, I think, Gay Street. I'm not real sure, but anyway. He was with them for a while, and they sold instruments and the music. Mm-hmm. And then he went with Ziggy Coyle for a while, and saw him through the transition from where they were on North High, close to campus, and then they moved up further, up High Street, not too far from North High School. And that was nice. And then I think he decided he wanted to have just the music and not have the instruments and everything. Okay. So he went to a place on Town Street, I believe, near the Ohio Theater, and that was good, but there wasn't any parking or anything. And eventually he wound up here, which has been a godsend because there's plenty of parking. It's a little harder to get to than it used to be, but it's still accessible. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can find my way here, so it's all right.
Yeah,
and the thing here was that you had everything. Now, we did have some music stores in the North End that catered mostly to organ, church music, and those things. And for a while, there was one opposite campus where you could get actually the more classical bassoon and clarinet and flute music. You had to order it, but that was right off campus. Mm-hmm. But eventually all that I think wound up in this building, if I'm not mistaken. And you have, here has been a great service to music teachers. And the other thing is that, especially during COVID, but before that, I live in Urbana, and it's a distance down here, and so I can call up and I ask for the weirdest things, because my teaching is totally weird. I'm going to give a recital with my kids in a few weeks, and most people would be embarrassed just to go, I think, because I have all these fun things we do.
Awesome.
Well,
I love that.
well,
You're
we
so
play.
creative.
We do Saints Go Marching In at the end, and I have the trombone player runs around with an umbrella, and you know, it's not your normal recital.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So interactive.
Well, my feeling, well, I have one girl that's playing. I've walked her through 5 different instruments now. She plays everything from xylophone. She made superior in contests on her clarinet solo. So, you know, and I have wonderful kids, and I'd like to tell you about that somewhere along the line, because I am just so fortunate. I'm starting my 69th year of private teaching, and how very fortunate I am that I've just, all along the way, I've just had the most wonderful young people, and I've had kids that have limited abilities. I have kids who they're in the stars as far as I'm concerned, and yet I'm just very fortunate. But that means that when I'm looking for something, I call down here and I press 2 or I press 1, or, you know, depending on what I'm working on, because I also I play organ as a substitute at the church, not so much recently, but, you know, I just always need some weird thing, let's put it that way. And I describe it. I remember I wanted to do Das Gebet one time, and I called down here, and I think it's Barbara, right? And Barbara went through all the books, I think, in the whole downstairs, but she says, I found it. I was so tickled, but I had been using it. They used to send out sample scores to band directors and orchestra directors, and I was playing Das Gebet from a miniature score about this big.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm sorry, but my vision eventually didn't allow me to do that anymore. And I said, I love the piece, but I don't know where to find a copy. And she had it for me. And so this has been a wonderful place for me to come and to be able to phone up and say, hey, I need such and such, and well, like the other day, I talked with you about a trumpet book, and I've always thought that what John started, I don't think any of us could have imagined what the store would eventuate into, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm really proud to have been his student, and Mary was just so wonderful. And interesting, she worked at Heaton's, and then of course she knew all the tricks and everything when he opened the store then, you know, and Mary was a big part of it. So I used to visit them in Florida and different places, and they're very, very special. But I think that maybe one of the things that you asked about was some of the highlights in my life, and I've certainly had a lot of them, and most of them have been in music, of course.
Right. Some big milestones for.
I have directed bands, choirs, started orchestras, directed orchestras. I played in the Springfield Symphony for 15 years, and then I had the second baby, and that kind of took me out of the business. But I love teaching. I never had a student that I couldn't love. Some of them required a little more love than others, but I've just been so fortunate in my career, and the things that I have to think a lot of them were chosen for me somehow, but it's just been so much fun, and Ohio State prepared me extremely well for what I was doing, and I enjoyed my classes there. I can remember in 7th grade looking up on the wall, and they had these huge pictures of instruments, and I wanted to know what that was all about. I just had to, and really when I went to Ohio State, I think the big thing was I was going to get brass classes, and I had played violin and some cello, not very well, but good enough to hold down the back row, you know? And I loved all those classes and learning how all those things worked, and I certainly got a lot of that at Ohio State. But as I said, I was librarian for the band, which was all men. The Ohio State, and earlier in my lifetime, before the Second World War, a lot of the marching bands were all men, and the concert bands were all men. And Mary, having sat first chair in the concert band, that's a big deal,
right?
You know,
right.
And she was certainly worthy of it. But the point being that bands especially came through the military traditions. Well, there weren't women in the military other than nurses and so forth. And so people think that the Ohio State University was deliberately keeping girls out of the band. That was a tradition. I don't think it occurred to me when I was librarian, gee, why aren't they letting me in the band? It was just the tradition.
Right.
But in '73, the university and the band directors and all came to the conclusion that it was time to have girls try out for the band. And I didn't know quite how I felt about that, because it was losing one tradition. And yet I'd marched all my life. I'd done crazy things. I remember one of the schools where I taught I said, I don't understand why you can't do 8 to 5. I cannot understand. I said, you could march a box. I said, I could do it blindfolded. Well, that was a really stupid thing to say to a group of kids.
Yeah, because then they made you do it?
They blindfolded me, and I kept praying all the way around, you know, that I wouldn't wander off somewhere. But I did. I came back. I said, put your toe right there. And I came back and stepped on his toe. And
nice.
I didn't have any more kids complaining about it. And the girls especially, you know, they came right with it.
Yeah.
Well, there were many, many women, some in classes ahead of me, that would have made fine marching band members. And as a matter of fact, there's one lady that went off, and she was a band director at Wake Forest over in North Carolina, and she did all the Ohio State stuff with them, and they thought they'd found a miracle, I think, you know. But up to my day and past, I got my doctorate in '74. I don't remember, isn't that awful? I was just really glad when I got it, but at any rate, all those years it had continued in the tradition. And I was all with it. Well, they called me one day and they said, we're starting an alumni group for the marching band, and we'd like you to come and we'll elect you secretary. And I thought, wow, that's neat. And then I said, well, it was Paul Dross, she called me, and I said, Paul, I said, you know, I'll come, I'll eat your free dinner, but they're never going to elect a woman secretary. Well, I served for almost 20 years as secretary of the alumni group, which I thought was just wonderful. I mean, this is so exciting. And then in '73, when they were going to have girls try out, and they had to do everything. As a matter of fact, I think if you're the first to do anything, you've got to be the best to do anything. We had a period where women were invited into professions as a matter of evening things up and so forth, and they weren't prepared for it. And then there was a long period where they didn't ask them into those because they couldn't handle it. Well, you have to be really good at what you're going to do. Anyway, I was of two minds. I hope that really quality girls signed up to try out, which they did, and they were really, really tremendous. But the first alumni band day came before the tryouts. Okay. And I had been librarian in school, and then I'd been secretary of this alumni group for a couple of years at that point. And we were starting the alumni band that we played in for a lot of years. It's still going. We had a little time off last year, but anyway, they asked me to leave the room. I thought, well, that's weird. And but I came back in, and they were all slapping each other on the backs and clapping, and I thought, I don't know what's going on here. And they said, well, we've decided that you're going to be the first woman to march with the band. Well, it could knock me over, but you have to remember, they were not trying to keep women out of the band. They were following a tradition. And number two, it was the men that asked me to march. I wasn't standing out there saying, gee, I'd like to march with you. You know, it was the men that asked me to march. And I, to my utter disgrace, I looked down at my feet just as we started off on the field, and the camera caught it, of course. And they wouldn't let me forget it. I said, if you were the first woman on the field, you'd want to make sure your foot was on that yard line. I said, I make no excuse for it. I just felt that I had to do that. But those are the kinds of things that have made my life so interesting and thrilling, and lots of fun, and lots of hard work with all that.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you don't do all the things I've done without working hard. And speaking of that, maybe you'd like to see this.
Yes, please.
I've been what they call historian, and lately they've called me the glue. At Bexley High School. I was the class of somewhere on here, 53. And somehow I wound up being historian, and I've kept track of our whole class for all these years, 68 years now. I can't believe that. I'm not old enough to do that. I tell people I live in the wrong century. But anyway, each time we have a big reunion, I usually put together something about an update. And so I had 30 boxes of the history of our class. Wow. And I went to several places of higher learning. I said, this would make a wonderful dissertation. It would make a wonderful master's thesis. You wouldn't have to go to a library. I've got all those 30 boxes. Well, there was zilch interest in that. And finally I thought, well, if it's going to get written, I'm going to have to write it. But our class is really amazing. But this is called The Beat Goes On for the best class ever. And that's so Bexley 53. And I suppose there are people who would disagree with me, but I can't possibly tell you all that's in the book. But our class, I taught in the schools for 34 years. I taught at a college. I taught in grade schools, high schools all over. It sounds like I couldn't keep a job, doesn't it?
No, it means you wanted to just be involved.
Well, I just loved everything I did, and I liked the kids so much. And anyway,
spread your knowledge as much
our
as
class
possible.
was just amazing. We have a fellow that was commander of one of the nuclear subs.
Oh, wow.
We have 2 doctors that were in charge of the whole medical centers where they were. One at Duke and one at Ohio State. But there are 21 doctorates in our class.
Oh, wow.
We have a major league judge in Florida. Now, most of us are retired now, but I find out the beat does go on. These people are all still doing things, and the charities they represent, and the teaching they represent, and
love
We
that.
have one man that was a negotiator for the United Auto Workers, and he met every president after Kennedy, you know, and I think,
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was international, and these people have traveled, they've done things. We have, our class president was Bob Weiler, and you see his name all over town, and he's done so many wonderful things. We have another member that wrote the protocol for mammograms for the United States.
Wow.
Now you stop and think about that. How many lives did that man save? You know,
a lot.
and you just, I
Still
mean, we
going.
have all these doctors, and we have actors, singers, musicians. You name something, and somebody in our classes excelled at it, whatever it is. And I really,
So impressive.
and we credit the school, of course. I mean, we had excellent
The
instruction.
environment
Yeah.
sounds very, very positive.
Yeah, and our groups were good, our bands and choirs and all. At that time, we weren't allowed to go to contests except solo and ensemble, so that was strange when I found out the bands and choirs went to contests, you know, that was a surprise, but things were so different. As I've written the book, I've found the difference between our times and these times. It doesn't seem like the same country sometimes, you know, but our class and the classes just preceding us and one or two following us, we were Depression children. And then as the Depression lessened, we went into World War II with the rationing. And so we didn't realize that we were deprived of things because that's the way it had always been. And I think that some of that got into our blood some way, that you don't have to have everything in the world. What you are and what you do is much more important than anything else.
Yeah, you can make anything happen. You have to.
And
I
I
like
will
that.
tell you that our band was outstanding, but there are some wonderful band stories in here. I'll tell you one of them. I won't tell you all of them, but the one that amuses me to this day, we were horrified at the time, but at that time, North High was the high school, and they, for instance, they did musicals. They did
Production.
Broadway musicals.
Wow.
We were still doing operettas.
Okay.
And they were fine,
Oh, yeah,
but
those
they
are fun.
were old stuff, you know. And we thought it was wonderful when we'd go over and see what North High was doing. And they had good bands, and they had excellent choral programs, and it just, I was very envious of the kids that went to North, although I had a wonderful education at Bexley. But anyway, Bexley didn't have school buses. There was no need for us. Nobody had school buses in the metropolitan area because there was transportation if you needed it, and we walked to school, you know, and you didn't have to walk much over a mile to get there from anywhere in Bexley, so we did that. So they had to hire buses to take the band to other schools for away games. Well, we were playing North, and we may have played North before, but I remember particularly my senior year, that was gonna be a big deal. We were gonna do our best, we were gonna show off, we were gonna be the best band on the field. Well, the bus driver got lost looking for North High School.
Oh no.
And we arrived at the time we were supposed to be entering the field for the pregame.
Ooh.
Well, Mr. Stanton was crazy. Hurry, hurry, go, 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 get your, you know, and we were out there, and we all ran for the field. Well, now you'll probably get ahead of me on this one, but we lined up, ready to go to the field, and I mean, as we were lining up, we were getting the roll-off, you know, and everything.
Oh my God.
But we had marched at home and away to the opposing team, and we marched hello down the field. Well, I was in the top of the H, and I looked over, and there was a whole lot of band over there, and I kept thinking, something is wrong. But we marched down the field, and I came off the field, and Bob Weiler, who was president of our class, said, "Do you know what you just did?" And I said, "No, what did we just do?" And he said, "Well," he said, "you marched down in front of the whole North High stands, spelling out, 'Oh, hell.'"
That's amazing.
I don't think Mr. Stanton was real pleased with us.
Oh. That's funny.
Well, we've had a lot of funny things happen over the years.
That is a mix-up.
Oh, that same year, I think John had been to some kind of seminar or something, and he came back with this impossible drill for us to do. Double to the rear with a slight hesitation and a left flank, right flank march. And
Whoa.
my row, I was so proud of my row. They did it perfectly. We did it perfectly in rehearsal. Everything went well. And the night we did it, I wasn't going to tell this story because it's very embarrassing to this day. The night we did it, the right flank, I just kept on going. And the tuba player and the drummer that were the other squad leaders, you know, they went with me. They thought I knew what I was doing. So we marched over to the sideline. The rest of the man's doing this floppity flippy out here, you know, and the drummer says, "Okay, Jan, what do we do now?" I said, "Ready to turn to," and we did an about face and went back. And we came back just exactly when the band came into that spot.
Nice.
Well, people in the stands thought we were a little solo group and everything, and they applauded, the three of us, you know. John didn't applaud.
He knew. You covered it well, though. You covered it very well.
But so many wonderful stories, you know, and I just can't imagine having a more interesting life than what I've had with all the things. I was the first woman to play in the and a couple of professional bands that had been all male, and the one, they just badly needed a flute player. They said, "You come to the next rehearsal," and I said, "What?" And I will say the other thing that really, I've received a lot of awards from the marching band over the years, but 10 years after I was the first woman on the field, I was the first woman to direct the national anthem in the stadium, and that was
really cool.
That was a big, big thrill. And there's a story with that too, because the band director, I won't mention the name, but anyway, all the way out to the steps where I'd go up and conduct, and Jan, I said, "You're gonna tell me not to screw it up?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Believe me, I've been doing this for a long time. It's not a big deal."
Right.
And then he kept saying, "Jan, and I said, "Okay, am I the first woman to do this?" And he said, "You're the first woman to do anything out here."
That's awesome.
Oh, it was these are
so
wonderful
sweet.
things, and
Yeah.
and it's funny how things stick with you. I'm a member of the DAR, and we do a lot of wonderful things and a lot of patriotic things. But when we meet someplace where there's no piano, they ask me to do the anthem, and then they sing along. And last month, we had one where we did that, and we hadn't met together very much recently at all. And so I started the national anthem, everybody sang along, and then we sat down and everybody was kind of giggling. And I thought, what's so funny? They said, "Do you know what you did?" And I said, "I conducted the national anthem." And they said, "No." At the end, I had said, "Go Bucks!" I said, "Well, I always thought those were the last two words to it."
Yeah, it's like reflex now.
Oh, I thought that was so funny, but they were all giggling, and I thought, what happened here?
That's a natural end to this. Is that not written in everybody else's sheet music?
Oh, I tell so many people, if you can't have a good time, you're not living your life right. There are just so many funny things happen. And of course, we were horrified when we realized we'd ridden a whale down the North High field, and yes, marching off to the side of the band, it was an awful thing at the time, but now it's fun to think about it, and none of us is perfect, And that's the thing about the book. So many people have had terrible things happen in their lifetime, and I said, no, this is a celebratory book. We all have had trials of various kinds, but this is a celebration.
Yeah, this is the mark that they all leave on the world, the real impact of,
we're going to have
work.
I didn't want to have a book signing because I'm not sure that anybody will buy it, nor will they want my signature, but we're having what we call a launch, and bless their hearts, the people at Bexley High School are having me launch it at the school.
Oh, that's wonderful.
On August 3rd.
August 3rd,
and
okay.
From 10 to 12. Mm-hmm. And I'm so excited, but I can't get over that even, after all these years, that anybody would still care about our class. I do.
Yeah.
They call me the glue, as I said. They gave me a jacket, as a matter of fact, that's blue and white Bexley colors, and it says, "You're the glue."
That's amazing. That is like.
Well, this was wonderful to do because I was able to have a visit with everybody in my class while I wrote it.
Aww.
And some of them have been gone many years, but it was when I wrote about their achievements. We had one guy that went around the world, and I had to take a plane over the waters, but he went around the world on a scooter.
Oh, wow.
These are really interesting people.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun, and I had a visit with all of them. We have some wonderful artists. A sculptor. He was for 40 years in the art department at the University of Michigan. I haven't told him, but I've forgiven him.
You went to the dark side.
Well, I think I've been very fortunate in the things that have happened to me all these years, and I can't take credit for all those things because, like marching and directing, I didn't go up and say, hey, I want to do this, or expect it.
Showed up
but it was the men that asked me to do those things. It was John Stanton that taught me rhythms. It was Mary Stanton taught me how to really play the flute, and
it's about being connected. It's about being with people who have that higher quality of output of product, and then you go along with that, and you are also someone who has a good high quality that you produce.
Well, I'm so thrilled with my students.
Yes, and you had told me you have some students who they have written in specifically to nominate you.
Oh, that's a lovely story. The Springfield Symphony Orchestra every year awards an outstanding music educator award, and 2 years ago they decided to go outside that and include private teachers. Well, my leg took me out of the classroom a long time ago, but I've continued my private teaching. And one of my students got wind of this award, and they told me what they were going to do because they had to ask me, like where I went to school and what I did and all that. But I had 5 students that wrote essays to the symphony orchestra, and I did not expect anything to come of it. Number one, because the theme for this year was, how did you adjust to the COVID? Well, private teachers, there were some that managed, but me and a computer, that would not have worked for me. But I did a lot of telephoning, you know, and that sort of thing, and talking with the kids and what are you doing. But if I'd schedule a lesson, I'd get a phone call. Oh, they've quarantined the flute section. I can't come, or I'm sorry, but I can't do this, you know, and that and the other thing. And so it was hit or miss through that whole season.
Doing your best.
But they did call me from the symphony, and I am to be recognized as a finalist for that award. And
amazing.
But I've already had the honor. Those 5 kids taking time and writing something about me, that's really lovely.
Yeah, that is.
And,
it's really special. That's a
and,
huge testament to to your students and the kind hearts that they have.
Well, they're just wonderful kids, and it's so much fun teaching them. And
yeah,
I don't remember very many of my teachers smiling at me. And that's one thing. We laugh, and we get to the point where if they make a mistake, instead of glowering at them or something, we all just laugh, and then they go back and work on it, you know. But
really
it's
nice
just
then they have those funny stories like you have with your life, and they can also look back and go, oh, that moment that I made a mistake, it's actually a funny moment, and I learned something from it.
Well, we've had a lot of funny moments, and I always take my kids. Usually, our recitals are done at nursing homes and places like that, because they love seeing children. They just love seeing children and hearing them play their instruments, you know. And the kids don't get quite so nervous as if it was a big formal recital, you know. But it's kind of funny because you never know what's going to happen. One of my boys was playing the piano, and somebody just drifted up out of the audience and sat down beside him. And I thought, I wonder what he's going to do. And he just kept on playing. It was just wonderful.
That's amazing. That's a well-trained kid. He's like, no, you just welcome, sir, welcome.
So it's just life is a wonderful thing, and I'm grateful to all the people that have made a contribution to my life, because I don't know what it would have been like if it hadn't been like it is, but many times it's just plain weird, but it's so much fun.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming in and telling us all about your story and about your book. If you want to see her, August 3rd at Bexley High School. What time again?
From 10 in the morning till noon.
10 till noon. Bexley High School, August 3rd. Check out her book, The Beat Goes On.